The story begins on Saturday morning. The main character is Lee Young-woo is a brown-haired girl with light brown eyes who crosses paths in the kitchen with her husband, a gray-eyed brunette Kang Seong-jae. The girl is not happy. Every time she sees her husband, it becomes difficult for her to even breathe. Seong-jae says that one of his relatives' wedding is at 4 today, and they have to be there, so he will send a car to pick her up. Yeonu agrees. She thinks that there is a wall between them, which the man himself installed, back in the day when she first came to this house. He did not let her into one single room, his bedroom. But despite everything, she was obliged to live with him. At the wedding of a relative of John Woo looks dreamily at the newlyweds. They are happy, and she thinks that this is what a real marriage should be like. At this time, Seong-jae's aunt starts asking him when he and his wife will have children, because they have been married for 2 years. Eon was shocked and surprised. Woo stains his dress with food and drops the knife. Seong-jae says with a smile that they are too young for kids. Plus, Yeon-woo is still studying the archaeological methods of researching ancient art. Yeon-woo also smiles knowingly and thinks that if Song had not inherited the business by becoming the vice president of the J shopping center, he would have been a good actor. And she is already used to this game. The aunt is not happy about this. She stubbornly points out that it is John's business, Woo, now, to give birth to a child. The uncle intercedes for them, demanding to give the youth peace. The older couple continue to argue, but Yeon-woo almost does not listen. She thinks that she will never truly belong among these people. She goes to the dressing room and tries in vain to wash the stain off her dress, thinking that it would be better for her to stay here until they let her go home. Suddenly, an aunt comes out of the toilet and says that a woman should be the head of the family and it takes a long time to learn, and leaves. Yeon-woo is outraged. She is against breaking someone's will. In addition, she herself seems to be on a leash in this relationship. Suddenly, she notices a lonely puppy with a wounded paw and calls a servant to help. He refuses to take the puppy to the vet immediately, and Yeon-woo demands a first aid kit from home. She treats the puppy's paw and thinks that he is bored here all by himself. So she, understanding his condition, decides to spend a little longer with the animal. Yeon-woo hears a strange voice that promises them to meet soon, and does not understand where it came from. There are no people around. She is interrupted by Seong-jae, who has been looking for his wife everywhere. He reprimands her for soiling her dress with dirt and puppy blood. Yeon-woo apologizes and insists that she couldn't pass. Jae's friends call them with them, addressing Yeon-woo as not by name, but as Seong-jae's wife, and she thinks that she does not know anyone here. And they do not know what terrible relationship they have with their husband. Yeon-woo is afraid of him and does not know what to do with him in the future. Suddenly, Seong-jae hugs her, but it turns out it's because her uncle and aunt are looking at them. He asks why she is avoiding him and asks to hug his neck. This is how their performance begins. They share a kiss, but Yeon-woo is not enjoying this. She thinks that this is the last day when she plays on his terms, because she is going to file for divorce. Yeon-woo recalls that she once thought of Seong-jae as a savior. She knew him from university and met him again when she went to see Ok Seung-jae, a woman who is served by the Yeon family. Yeon-woo was her personal assistant. However, she was once confused with Ok Seung-jae's daughter. The woman hit Jeon-woo, wounding her to the point of blood, burned her, saying that she would never find herself in high society, thus remaining a housekeeper. Seong-jae then helped her and gave her a handkerchief to wipe away the blood. Yeon-woo writes him a letter for the first time, telling him it's time to end their relationship. After all, he promised that in 2 years she will be able to do whatever she wants, and she can no longer pretend. She explains how miserable she was with him, cold and distant, and that they only live together because of mutual benefits, and asks to let her go to find true happiness. After finishing, she cries. Seong-jae asks her to think about it for another week. She refuses because she wants to get the right to divorce as soon as possible. After all, it's normal to break up if you don't love each other. Seong-jae is surprised. He suggests her to start loving each other. He tells her to wait 2 months. His company is currently split into 2 branches, and the VP's divorce will confuse them. Yeon-woo agrees and gives him the ring. Seong-jae puts it in his wife's hand because you never know when you'll need it. Yeon-woo, despite her husband's opposition, packs up and leaves. She promises to go to important events with him and not to be seen by anyone, so that rumors about troubles in their relationship do not spread. This is the beginning of her new real life. Life of Lee Yong-woo. Yeon-woo settled in the house of her brother, Tae-woo, and lived there for 3 months. During this time, she met Seong-jae twice, on his father's birthday and at the signing of the divorce papers. This is the third meeting. He came in the rain to her brother's house, although she did not say where she lived. She is afraid that he wants to call off the divorce and stubbornly thinks that she will still live as she wants. Seong-jae says that his brother told him where to look for her, and he just came to see how she was doing. He asks her to be happy in the future and live well, and leaves in the rain. This is unexpected for her. She recalls that the marriage proposal was also unexpected. He said it to the forehead, explaining that he needed to get married as soon as possible, and he did not have a bride. Well educated, she is suitable. He said something else when she agreed, but she can't remember what, and it doesn't matter. Now she has a new, free life. The 2nd of March is the last day of their divorce proceedings. He is approved, and she is relieved to know that now she will be called Abandoned Cinderella. Seong-jae asks her to be careful and says that the only reason he agreed to the divorce was because of her wishes. She asks him to take off the wedding ring. He calls her for tea. Yeon-woo offers to meet in a few months because she is busy now. He agrees and again asks her to be happy. Seong-jae says he made her a present for their breakup and just smiles when she asks what exactly, surprised. It turns out to be a 10 billion won deposit. Yeon-woo is surprised to think that she broke up with him not because of money, but because she wanted to live her own life, not a theatrical one, like Lee Yeon-woo. She runs after him to tell him to take the money back. She sees him take off the wedding ring, and it falls to the road. Without thinking, Seong-jae goes to pick her up and ends up under a passenger bus. He is driven to death in front of John Woo. Yes, on the day when she thought her new life would begin, her husband died. She thought she wanted to erase him from her life, live as if he didn't exist, but not at that price. At Seong-jae's funeral, Yeon-woo approaches Seong-jae's mother and gives her his wallet, which has their wedding photo in it. The mother asks to keep his thing and notes that he did not take off the wedding ring until the last. His mother says that once upon a time she made him promise to obey his parents' will, and he only asked not to interfere in his marriage, that he never did what he wanted. He had no friends, but he brought her. For the first time, Yeon-woo said things like that, and it made her rethink Seong-jae's behavior and actions. She began to sympathize with him. At home, she finds a basket of flowers. It was a birthday present from Seong-jae, which he ordered in advance. Yeon-woo sobs as he sits by the basket. While she is crying, her friend hugs her. Yeon-woo thinks in despair that he never said anything to her, never opened up, let her give up on him. She doesn't understand why. Lying in bed, she alternately thinks about how much she wants to see him again and how he didn't love her anyway. She doesn't even know who she was to him. She does not understand why he grabbed the wedding ring at the last moment. Why did he look at her so surprised before he died? Yeon-woo wakes up in the bed they share with Seong-jae, wearing old clothes that she threw away a long time ago, and doesn't understand what's going on. She thinks she is still asleep or has gone mad with guilt. She realizes that she woke up the day she told Seong-jae about the divorce and goes to check his bedroom. Maybe he's alive. Seong-jae grabs her and throws her on the bed, asking what she's doing. She screams in fear and surprise, and Seong-jae asks why, since he was the one being attacked here. She asks how he got here and starts touching him to make sure he's not a ghost. Seong-jae suggests that she stop seducing him, or she might end up without clothes. Yeon-woo asks her to hit him once, just to make sure it's not a dream. He refuses. Yeon-woo, looking closely, realizes that it is really Seong-jae and apologizes, explaining that she had a realistic nightmare. He suggests that she see a doctor if necessary and reminds her of her relative's wedding. This is how she makes sure that she has returned to the past, on the last day she spent in this house. Her wish to turn back time came true. In order to finally make sure, she goes to her educational institution and checks the status of the work she was working on, creating an illustrated book about the history of relics. Her colleague, Hee-jin, asks why she came on Saturday and asks her to take breaks while she works. She asks if he hasn't found a home for himself. In the past, he was just looking. Hee-jin tells her about the process of searching for a home, and Yeon-woo, based on his knowledge of the future, gives him advice. She is sure that she will be able to change the future for the better. She decides to start changing the future by changing her clothes for the wedding. Yeon-woo wore an elegant dark blue dress with a blue flower, stunning Seong-jae with her look. But everything repeats itself, including the aunt's question about the pregnancy and the fall of the cutlery. And Yeon-woo is confused. Should she act differently now? Say something differently? She argues with her aunt about how important her job is, and she points out that the only thing that matters is what makes money. Yeon-woo manages to convince her that this is not the case. Seong-jae is impressed by her words and confident demeanor and smiles at her. She fears that this will reflect poorly on Seong-jae's relationship with his relatives, but he praises her, calling her actions wonderful. She remembers the puppy she was supposed to save and runs to the kennel, only to find a blonde-haired stranger there, whom she mistakes for a puppy for a moment. She asks if he saw a dog here. The stranger is also injured, so Yeon-woo calls a servant to bring a first aid kit and treats his scratch. He asks for her phone so he can say thank you in private, but Yeon-woo refuses. She sees Seong-jae. He watches over them from afar, and when Yeon-woo approaches, asks her to be careful, because there are a lot of extra eyes. His name is Friends again, as last time. Seong-jae says he will be back late. Like last time, Seong-jae hugs her and she decides to kiss him first. If it can't be avoided, she'll do it on her terms. Seong-jae blushes and tells her that it will be on time and to wait for him while he looks around the house. He is confused by her actions. She is glad that she gets to know him better and better, because it means that their relationship can be changed, as well as the future. Seong-jae, drinking with friends, thinks about Yeon's strange behavior Woo, and at this moment, his friend says that he always sets a line between himself and people that no one can cross. Yeon-woo also spends time with his friend Soo-ji, who admires that he stood up for Yeon-woo in front of her aunt and cheers her up. Yeon-woo is convinced that the decision to prevent the divorce was the right one. Seong-jae, in search of his wife, goes through all the rooms of their house, marvels at the chaos in her bedroom, and finds unpacked divorce papers there. He is terrified. When Jeon-woo comes back, he says he finally understood her strange behavior today. It's because she wanted a divorce. But he is asking for a delay of 2 months due to difficulties in the company. Yeon-woo says it's an old document and she's changed her mind. Her feelings have changed. He asks if she wants more money in the divorce. She says that she had a nightmare where she lost Seong-jae and realized that he is important to her. She doesn't want to be without him. Seong-jae doesn't believe her. He thinks it's about money and is about to leave. She screams at him that she won't take a penny. He gets angry, asks why she prepared the documents then. He tells her not to worry about being judged by her elders. She shouts even louder that she doesn't care about the elders. She just changed her mind. He asks, then why would you want a divorce at all? Terrified, she says she just likes his kisses. He, of course, does not believe her, but she asks him to repeat the kiss at his aunt's house, only making it more tender. Suggests to imagine that he is the first and will be their new beginning. Asks her to compliment her. However, Seong-jae refuses, agreeing that there will be no divorce. Outside the door, he blushes like a cherry and thinks she's going to drive him crazy. They need to talk again. So he goes into her room again and sees her sobbing over the divorce letter. It reminds him of the day he first saw her cry and decided to marry her. He saw her 5 years ago, and 3 years later he decided to propose. He thought that this would solve all her problems, and he decided to marry not because of love, but because he gave in to his desires. I never thought about this decision. His friends were not happy. Jeon-woo had a bad reputation in high school, allegedly using a guy and dumping him. It turned out that the guy was beating her. Seong-jae was horrified. He thinks he wanted to save her by marrying her, but she has many scars. What if she gets hurt again? To drown out the memories of that incident, Seong-jae organizes a charity dinner where Yeon brings her Woo in it. Seong-jae's friend spreads gossip about Yeon-woo, and the man beats him. He thinks he won't be able to comfort her if she stays silent, but asks her out loud to act out a kiss with him if she doesn't mind. She agrees, but he doesn't know how much she can take. He gives them separate rooms so they don't invade her personal space and hopes she'll be happy with that. In the present, Jeon-woo, in tears, runs out of her room, telling him not to pay attention to her. It's little things. She sits at the door and thinks, did she do anything to save this marriage? Yeon-woo tries not to fall asleep because he is afraid that he will then go back to the future when Seong-jae is gone. But of course she falls asleep. Fortunately, she wakes up the next day as she had hoped. She goes to look for Seong-jae and peeks into his bedroom. It's empty. Seong-jae comes out of the bathroom wet. He asks what she is doing in his space, and she asks him not to separate them anymore. Seong-jae agrees with a smile, and immediately follows her to her room, offering to see how she changes clothes. After all, Yeon-woo had seen him undressed and touched him these past 2 days. Yeon-woo is confused, at which point Seong-jae suggests that she visit the hospital to check her psychological state after the nightmare. Yeon-woo asks him to give him a reprieve until tomorrow. Sitting in a coffee shop, Jeon-woo ponders what to do next. Even though she warned about the divorce, she is still restless. After all, although some events change, some remain. She decides to write down everything she knows about the future and what she might need, and calls Seong-jae's mom to ask her about what Seong-jae is like. They arrange a meeting. A day later, Seong-jae asks what she's up to. Yeon-woo says that because of the horror, she re-examined her whole life and decided to change. She asks Seong-jae to let her touch him. Seong-jae is surprised and panics a little. He asks why, and she says it's to check on him. Seong-jae refuses and says that there is no need to do dishonest things. She accuses him of being an expert in insincere actions. She again asks him for touches and says that these are all her desires. She is not asking for money or feelings because she herself does not love him. This hurts Seong-jae, but he doesn't show it. Seong-jae asks if she wants him sexually, but Yeon-woo refuses in a panic and repeats again that she has no feelings for him. He agrees, although he is not very happy. But then he says that the rule should be two-way, and then he too will get the right to touches. She panics even more and reneges on the deal, instead asking him to take off the wedding ring. In her mind, all the blame is on this piece of metal. After all, Seong-jae rushed onto the road because of it. Seong-jae versus. He asks if she's uncomfortable seeing that ring, knowing they're married. She thinks it's not. It just causes discomfort in itself. She doesn't always wear hers, and she's ashamed of it. Seong-jae is displeased, but does as she asked and gives her the ring. Asks if she wants anything else. Yeon-woo asks not to wear any rings on his hand anymore. He agrees and leaves. She realizes that she did something wrong and misses work, so she decides to come to Seong-jae's place to take care of him and apologize. Seong-jae, meanwhile, is completely confused. He does not understand how his well-being is connected with the ring. He thinks maybe she's planning to kill him. Then he thinks maybe she is sick and dying. He almost calls the doctor, but decides not to do anything behind John's back Woo, but ask her directly. But at this time, his mother calls and says that Yeon-woo promised to come to their house. Seong-jae asks if they suddenly pressured her in secret from him and thinks this is another strange act. Mom scolds him for his strange suspicions and asks if everything is fine in their marriage. It's sudden that she called. Seong-jae doesn't answer. Just at that moment, Yeon arrives Woo. They sit in silence for a while. Seong-jae says that he is not in the office often, and she promises to call next time and offers him a choice of tea. She brought different varieties. Seong-jae directly asks what is wrong with her and promises to cure her at any cost. She doesn't understand what he's talking about, and Seong-jae hastily closes the subject, embarrassed by his mistake. He asks why she came, and she promises herself to tell him the whole truth, everything she can. Yeon-woo apologizes for making the mourning and the ring situation. Seong-jae agrees and says she understands. She's uncomfortable wearing it every day, but he wears it all the time. In addition, due to the fact that he is without a ring, rumors or even bad articles in the media may spread. After all, many eyes are watching them. Yeon-woo didn't think about it at all, so she apologizes again. Seong-jae asks her not to suffer because of something she didn't do. Yeon-woo is saddened by his kindness because she still feels guilty. Yeon-woo says he can't give him the ring back. Seong-jae sighs tiredly and asks what the real reason is. Did she dream that he was crippled by the ring? Yeon-woo immediately begins to cry. Seong-jae is stunned by this and gives her napkins to wipe her tears. He asks her not to cry. She tries to hold back, but nothing works. Seong-jae kneels in front of her and asks her to look at him. Tell what happened. There is a mountain of used napkins on the table. Jeon-woo needs some time to calm down. She apologizes for upsetting his schedule. It doesn't matter to him. His wife is more important. He makes jokes about what could have happened to him and the ring to cheer her up, but it doesn't help. In the end, he guesses the reason, and Woo bursts into tears again. Seong-jae says that her dream is impossible because he never takes the ring off his hand. Not when sleeping, not when washing, never. Woo doesn't believe him, and then he offers her to prove it. He shows her photos and videos from various events, all of him with a ring. Woo says that something might happen to make him take off the ring, and he counters that if he's afraid of anything, he won't be able to leave the house. She takes a promise from him not to take off the ring. Whatever happens. Seong-jae looks at her suspiciously, but then smiles and says he's been doing it since the beginning. She returns the ring to him and apologizes for all that conversation at home. He laughs, wondering if she will check on him every day. Woo points out that he has already agreed to this. Seong-jae asks if it's true that she won't file for divorce and that she likes kissing him. Woo is covered in paint and asks to forget about this conversation too. Seong-jae smiles and tries to touch her hair, but she flinches in surprise but then lets herself be touched. He remembers all the times she did the same thing. With pain, he thinks that he wants to prove to her. He will never hurt her, he is safe, and he will never hit her. Woo finally gets lost, and blushing madly, jumps off the couch. She shouts that it's time for her and runs away, trying not to look at Seong-jae. He offers to take her to the first floor with a smile. The next morning, John is cheerful. Woo goes to Seong-jae's bedroom to check on his health. She wishes him good morning, and a sleep-deprived Seong-jae grumbles that it's not a good morning at all. Woo is afraid that something hurts him and tries to touch his neck. Seong-jae grabs her hand sharply, scaring her, telling her not to overdo it. After all, if she touches him, he can touch too. Woo is offended because they agreed that she can check on him. He admits that he could not sleep, so now his neck hurts and asks if she is satisfied. She asks if he's going to drive alone since he's sick, and folds his hands in prayer. He understands everything and with a sigh promises to call the driver. She smiles, pleased, and it hits him right in the heart. In the evening, he returns home tired, which scares her. She pesters him again about how he's feeling, but he says he's just very sleepy. He offers to touch it like the morning. Woo thinks he wants to and blushes at it, but is too afraid of the consequences. She wishes him good night and leaves. He detains her, but in a moment he changes his mind and also wishes her a good night. In the bedroom, Seong-jae thinks that Woo can't even imagine how and how many times she worries his soul, despite the fact that she doesn't care what's in his heart. She hasn't stopped checking on him in a week, and Seong-jae thinks it's because of a nightmare. But sooner or later, this storm of emotions in her behavior will subside. Woo writes to him, asking how his throat is, and he says that nothing hurts and he will be home by 11 in the evening. Woo smiles as he reads this. At that moment, a colleague approaches her and reminds her that today is the monthly banquet among assistant professors of the faculty. She says she will leave early, she won't make it to the banquet. He insists, and Woo gets lost but is saved by Hee-jin. The colleague says that only after showing himself well in front of Woo, they will be able to receive support from her husband's company. She thanks Jean, and he notes that he too is saddened by her absence from the banquets. But if he were her husband, he wouldn't let her either, because of her drunken habits. Yeon laughs and thinks that Seong doesn't know about them. She strongly thinks that she has to give up a lot of little things to save Seong-jae, but she is ready. Even if something happens to her herself, she will do everything to save his life. Back home late, Seong-jae sees Woo is on the floor unconscious and is afraid that she was sick with something. He picks her up in his arms, shouts her name, but she does not wake up. When she finally wakes up, she regrets not being able to drink beer because she was afraid to fall asleep. In a moment, she asks how he is and is glad that he is healthy. He is surprised that she fell asleep on the floor to ask this, and she replies that it was the only way she could cross paths with him. Seong-jae tells her to go to bed, and Woo snuggles up to him, promising to go to sleep only if he goes too. He was bitter at the thought that she wanted to use him because she had changed so much. But now he didn't know what to think. He asks if she will wait for him on the floor all the time if he is late. But she does not answer. she is already sleeping again. He wants to carry her to her room in his arms, but she moans through her sleep, and instead he carries her to his bedroom to sleep together. He does not understand what he is doing, so he decides to wash first and think later. After all, they are married. There is nothing strange about sleeping together. But despite this, he lies down on the very edge of the bed. Yeon-woo squirms on the bed, crawling closer to him, and Seong-jae is confused. He was just going to lay next to him. But what does she think? He touches her hair, and Yeon-woo smiles through his sleep. Waking up, she does not understand where she is and at what time. Because she has never slept in Seong-jae's room, she decides that she has entered a future where they are lovers and is embarrassed. Seong-jae remembers how he almost kissed her at night, but stopped in time, because she was asleep and did not give her consent to such a thing. He was ashamed of his actions. He envied Yeon-woo. After all, she could touch him as much as she wanted, but he could not touch her. Seong-jae, in a complete confusion of thoughts, went to sleep on the couch. Yeon-woo asks what was the point of putting her in his bed, and if Seong-jae was sleeping next to him. He shouts that not at all and asks her not to wait for him on the hall floor anymore. Yeon-woo suddenly grumbles in her stomach, and she is ashamed, asks not to notice, because she can eat in the university canteen. Seong-jae asks her to just eat with him with a smile. They get together and go to an expensive restaurant. Yeon-woo is confused. Why did he offer to eat together? After all, this is the first time in 2 years that this has happened. Seong-jae points out that she's definitely only interested in his well-being, but she checks on him very superficially. Besides, it's suspicious. Maybe she's planning to kill him? Yeon-woo shouts indignantly and fights. She says she hasn't thought to check on him all her life. When she's sure he's okay, she'll stop. Seong-jae says that he underestimated her. He thought she was quiet and kind, but she can be a fighter. Suddenly, he sees the remnants of food on the corner of her lips and gestures for her to clean up. Yeon-woo doesn't understand, so he leans into her to do it himself. She panics, and he hands her the handkerchief and sits down. He is upset by her reaction, that she was afraid of him. Why can't they close the distance in the relationship? Yeon-woo is very embarrassed by his reaction. Seong-jae tries to have a normal conversation. He asks her about her friend, about acquaintances at the university. She talks about her friends and asks about him. Seong-jae responds neutrally, and Yeon-woo recalls how his mother pointed out that he was a closed person. She thinks how unhappy he really is with his feelings hidden somewhere in the depths of his soul. She offers him to eat together at home somehow. He is happy with the offer. Seong-jae drives her to the university and tells her that it will be late again. And he thinks to himself that if he manages the schedule today, tomorrow there will be less work and they will be able to eat together. Her colleague Hee-jin calls her, and she calls him Sonbae, senior, as she often calls Seong-jae himself. He starts to get jealous. And he is also annoyed with his workers, because they reported that all the workers of the laboratory where John works women. Seong-jae is angry but doesn't show it, maintaining a casual conversation. He is annoyed that he left his naive wife with some suspicious man. He promises to come earlier and calls Yeon-woo his way in front of Hee-jin. They exchange hard looks. At work, Seong-jae thinks it's no wonder Yeon-woo works with her husband. He doesn't understand why he feels so bad at heart. Suddenly, his aunt comes to him. She worries about him because of the rumors about Yeon-woo, about her free life at school and her ex-boyfriend issues. Exasperated, Seong-jae asks where she heard all this gossip. The aunt remembers how Seong-hae told her about it, that every guy her daughter liked eventually, magically, started dating Yeon very quickly. Woo. Out loud, she asks what Seong-jae will do to the person who told this. Seong-jae replies that he will get rid of him or her, in social terms, of course, not literally. The aunt gets annoyed and shouts at Seong-jae not to be rude to her. She says that another rumor is Yeon-woo is jealous and cannot see how others are doing well, that she specially became close to Seong-jae. Seong-jae says that it was the other way around, and taking control of his emotions, smiles at his aunt, and then seriously says that she did not dare to hurt Yeon-woo if he does not want to make him unhappy. He returns home early, as promised, and sees her still in street clothes. He asks if she is cold in one dress, and she answers that she specially put on warm tights. Seong-jae asks her not to dress so openly that it is not tight. Allegedly, she should be uncomfortable. She replies that it is very comfortable and better than his shirts. She calls him Seong-jae again, and he asks not to do that again because it will be strange if she calls him that in front of strangers. She asks how to address him then, and he tells her to think for herself. Then she asks him to stop making eyes like that and points to his usual facial expression. He is indignant, says that he was born with such eyes. She clarifies that she is about his evil look. He scared her. He sighs tiredly and says that he never looked at her evilly and that he spent all his energy talking to her. Yeonu snaps that she is too. In an argument, they collide and drop a glass teapot on the floor. Seong-jae injures his hand on shrapnel. Yeonu grabs his hand, cries, asks to be careful. Seong-jae, also on the verge of panic, shouts at her to come to her senses. She is the one who is injured here. Her leg is torn, she is bleeding profusely. They go to the hospital, where both are given first aid. In the car, Seong-jae starts yelling at her because she didn't notice that she was injured herself, and tells her not to worry about him, but about herself. She thinks she's fine, and it's better that she got hurt, not Seong-jae. In the parking lot, Seong-jae says that he hates people with a character like Yeonw's Woo, those who constantly suffer and are indifferent to themselves, those who think, I will be quiet and will not cause trouble to anyone. Yeonu says that Seong-jae took advantage of her personality when he decided to marry her. He falls short and Jeonwoo gets out of the car, promising to think about himself and let him worry about himself. They did not cross paths again that evening. The next morning, Seong-jae approaches her room door but leaves without knocking. It turns out that Jeonwoo stood just outside the door, eavesdropping. Yeonu fumes in her room, thinking that she wanted to save Seong-jae, and here's a thank you and then she won't do it again. But in a moment, he repents of his thoughts. At the workplace, Seong-jae thinks that Yeon would not have responded to his words. She would have just listened sullenly, but now she has learned to snap back, and still cares about him. But after he gets angry, she stops checking on him, and he worries that they've started going back to the old days. It pains him to think about it. Suddenly, he receives a text message from his father. Yeonu came to Seong-jae's parents because she wants to know more about him. She and Seong-jae's mother go to take care of their garden, where her mother asks if she has any problems with Seong-jae. Yeonu says none, and to keep the conversation going, seriously asks if Seong-jae really had a 100 on her final exam at school. This is her plan, to give mom an opportunity to brag about her son. It turned out to be true. Seong-jae was trying to be the first to rub his current friend Ki's nose, June. Jae's father suddenly takes a photo of them and sends the photo to his son with a note that mom is smiling so happily for the first time in a year. He pretends that he just came to pull weeds and reaches out to pluck orchids instead, which is why he gets scolded by his wife. Yeonu is surprised and amused by this. Yeonu sneaks into the kitchen to prepare something to eat for everyone. Mom asks again if everything is okay with them. Because Seong-jae is not used to showing feelings, it can be difficult. Mom reveals that Seong-jae asked not to interfere in his marriage just before bringing Yeonu as a bride, and they were always on his side. She asks her not to tell Seong-jae about this conversation, and at that moment, Seong-jae himself enters. Mom leaves them alone to talk, and Jeonwoo asks how he knew she was his parents. Seong-jae admits that his father sent the photo. He asks if she cares how he feels, why she doesn't ask anything. Yeonu replies that he himself told her not to ask anything. About herself, she thinks that she checked last night, sneaking into his bedroom. He asks if she will always obey him so carefully and why she is cooking dinner here. She is annoyed that she can do whatever she wants, and then she realizes that he is standing close to her and is scared. Seong-jae says that he is unhappy because she recently injured her leg and is already standing there preparing something. Yeonu snaps that everything has healed a long time ago. She thinks about herself that it is always very difficult to be with him. That he himself said that she had a bad character, as if he had a better character. She angrily cuts the daikon, thinking that she simply accepts it as it is, because she thinks about the future. He suddenly asks her for forgiveness. She is so surprised that she starts cursing on the spot. He explains that he was the one who broke the kettle, but he was angry with her. It was unfair, and immediately asks her to go home if she is no longer angry. She refuses because she can do whatever she wants. He gets annoyed, but suddenly she hugs him. To a shocked song. Yeonu explains that his mother is looking at them, and it is necessary to show that they have already reconciled. She asks Seong-jae to pat her on the back, and he does. He follows her around the kitchen and is surprised that she knows how to cook, and Yeonu replies that she learned that when he asked her to marry him. But he definitely did not learn manners. After the wedding, she cooked him breakfast for a whole week, but he never ate anything. Seong-jae replies that he never eats breakfast and thought that she was covering for herself. He promises to always have breakfast, and she resents that she now has to cook breakfast every day. Seong-jae completely stops understanding what Yeon is then Woo wants. He asks why she started this conversation. Yeon says he doesn't know a thing about what's on her mind. He smiles, amused by her pouty expression. Yeon presents his daikon beef soup, and Seong-jae's parents are surprised that their son eats it. He hates daikon. Yeon is angry that he never brought this up and berates her. Seong-jae gets nervous under her gaze and lies that he liked this soup. Yeon intentionally offers him supplements. His mother is pleasantly surprised. She and Seong-jae's father praise their daughter-in-law. The four of them are having a great time. Afterwards, Seong-jae helps clean up the dishes and remembers Yeon's behavior with a smile. Suddenly, his mother scares him, coming up from behind and asking if he and Yeon had a fight. He says that she is a bad mother-in-law. After all, Yeon will agree to anything she is told to do, and thus becomes inattentive to herself. Mom understands that he is angry with himself and something happened between them. He tells her about yesterday's incident with the kettle and says that sometimes it scares him. Mom is going to go to John Woo, but he stops her and asks her to pretend she doesn't know anything. After all, Yeon will definitely feel burdened if she finds out that they are worried about her. Therefore, he asks not to call her to him often. She will sacrifice everything to please her husband's parents. Seong-jae goes to look for Yeon and finds her in the yard near the fire. She warms her hands with pleasure. However, when she sees the man, the smile disappears from her face and she turns away. He sits down next to her and asks why she came to the house alone. She sulks and asks, "Isn't it customary to praise wives for making friends with husbands' mothers?" Seong-jae agrees and tries to compliment her, but she cuts him off. He thinks she's cute when she pouts like that, and that next to her he drives like a fool. He admits that he married not because she was a convenient option, but because he wanted to. He wouldn't marry anyone else. She says she's glad to hear that and apologizes for yelling at him even though he took her to the hospital, and he promises to stop calling him Sonbae one day. Seong-jae thinks he wants to keep looking at her smile, touching her. He moves closer, within kissing distance, and offers her to make their game a reality. Yeon hesitates. His ability to play emotions without feeling them scares her. She doesn't know if she can trust him now, but she involuntarily moves closer, closing her eyes. She pushes him away, because if she allows herself to be charmed, she will return to the times when she could not say a word to him. She thinks their parents are watching over them, or he has started to find her available. Out loud, she says that it is not nice to do so because he knows that she is afraid of him. He is hurt by these words. Seong-jae asks if she only feels fear for him, and she confirms it, mentally stopping her heart from trembling. He says that if he grabs her, she will choke, that he makes her reach for him when her mind tells her not to. She mentally begs him to let her focus only on his safety and not her feelings. She runs away and goes to tell her parents that she'd better go home. They offer to stay for the night. When she refuses, her mother offers her to eat sweet potatoes on the path and scolds her father for not bringing them. Yes, John Woo understands who opened the door to the yard. They roast sweet potatoes outside on the same fire and give them to Seong-jae and Yeon with himself. Mom asks if John is free next week. She wants to buy her a couple of dresses for her husband's birthday. She invites her to go shopping, and Yeon agrees to Friday afternoon. At home, Seong-jae says that she cannot meet her mother if she doesn't want to. He will take care of everything. Yeon replies that she agreed because she wants it. She goes to her room but leaves the door open. Seong-jae leans against the jamb and apologizes again for trying to kiss. He says she shouldn't be afraid of him. After all, he is her husband. She has changed, and so must their relationship. She has to accept him, no matter how hard it is, overcome everything. He will help her. Yeon asks what exactly she should take, and Seong-jae says everything he does and will do. When asked what exactly he is going to do, Seong-jae says, "Kiss her." and someday, maybe even more. She hits him on the hand and asks why he does this. After all, he himself said that it was enough for them to just play for the public. That was his decision. He admits that she makes him hesitate, experience new things. That he submits to it for the first time, because she does it. That she's his wife and it's okay to hug and kiss her. She turns away and apologizes, admitting that her character is not what he now thinks. It is the fruit of her efforts. And she has no feelings for him. She just wants him to be healthy and live well. He is disappointed that she talks as if she is not in his happy future at all. Is she still thinking about divorce? Does she refuse to get close so she can pull away more easily? He leaves and thinks he can't let her go anymore. He calls someone and says he has a couple of questions about John Woo, arranging to meet tomorrow. Earlier, Yeon-woo lived in the house of the director of one of the J Group branches, with his wife Ok Seong-jae and her daughter Ma Sang-hee. Also at Yeon herself, Woo has a younger brother, Lee Tae-woo. He reveals that Ma Sang-hee is Yeon's age, Woo, and Ok Seong. He had a complex because her daughter was lagging behind Yeon in everything Woo. Yeon's girlfriend Woo reveals that in high school, Ma Sang-hee was spotted with a student in the assembly hall in a compromising situation. Ok Seong-jae trembled at the rumors about her daughter. She used Yeon Woo as a scapegoat. When John Woo was beaten, she took control of the incident, saying it would be better to call it not random violence, but relationship violence. Yeon's girlfriend Woo angrily yells that it's all a lie. That guy was in a relationship with Ma Sang-hee, who bribed him to beat up Yeon Woo when she will come home from school. Yeon Woo decided to remain silent, despite the fact that she knew the truth. She said that everything was resolved by itself. Besides, that guy went to the USA. Yeon Woo simply did not want her parents to find out about the incident. Sitting in the park near the University of Yeonwoo, Seong-jae thought he couldn't believe it. All the data he got on Yeonwoo through official channels turned out to be a fake. And despite the fact that John Woo did for Ok Seong-jae and beat her, Seong-jae thinks he was sure. Without asking anything, he protects Yeon-woo. But it turned out that he could not protect anything, that he had been using silence all this time. Yeon-woo, noticing him, approaches to ask what he is doing here. Seong-jae wonders how she can make such a cute and sincere expression after everything she's been through. He says he just wanted to try to wait for her from work because he's never done that before. Suddenly, a strong wind blows and Seong-jae gets something in his eye. She tries to see what is wrong. Seong-jae thinks that looking at how she has changed recently, he has been tormenting himself with guesses as to what her real image is. Now he sees her, the real one. As she grumbles at him, he thinks she's always been this way, but he realizes it too late. He apologizes again. She sighs and says that the main thing is that he is safe. Seong-jae asks if she's disappointed with how her first kiss was. She blushes and says she doesn't care. And the fact that she remembered his words is because of her good memory. He asks why, if she cares, she trembled at his approach and never met his eyes. She thinks what she thought was a wall between them, that he also feels discomfort towards her. She understands that he saw everything and decided to find out the truth. That maybe their relationship needed not time, but questions. Yeon-woo admits that his eyes scare her, and then he closes them and asks how he is now. Yeon-woo says she's still scared because of how gentle he is today and how he's cornering her. She admits that despite this, he scares her less than before. Seong-jae then says that they will slowly fix her in him, so that she was no longer afraid at all and followed him. She asks why correct her. Seong-jae honestly answers that there are many things he wants to do together, and he thinks he wants to protect her. Seong-jae hugs her and asks them to become a real couple. Yeon-woo thinks that how kind he is revenge for how she has changed. Apparently, he was uncomfortable, and now he is trying to show her how much. She is upset that he dared to suggest a real relationship, but says nothing and just suggests they go home. On the way, she thanks him for coming to pick her up today. He thinks to take her hand, but because he is driving, he misses and touches her thighs. She is angry. He is confused. At home, she sadly thinks that he asked them to be married to get her body, not her feelings. But she tells herself to pull herself together and think about Seong-jae's life, not about his sincerity. Seong-jae arrives home just then and asks if she wants to know how he is doing. She replies that it looks like he is healthy and returns to reading. For the next few days, the relationship between them is very cold, the same as it was before. But now she is not afraid of him and snaps at him. It pleases him, despite everything. The next time he comes home from work, he gives her a gift, a music box that his company designed as a souvenir. Yeonwoo casket seems very beautiful. She is disappointed that he just took the souvenir home, but he says that this one is custom-made, especially for her. She likes it very much. Seong-jae thinks that if he had known that she would like it, he would have done more for her. He will correct his mistakes step by step. He will change a lot to make her happy. Yeonwoo sits behind the casket until late at night, listening to it for the third hour. She says that she does not believe that there is such a beautiful melody in the world. Seong-jae, without thinking, blurts out that she is even more beautiful, but it is already time to sleep. Yeonwoo turns to him and asks to clarify. Which is more beautiful, herself or her voice? Confused, he says that both. She begins to question what is more beautiful, her voice or her. Seong-jae blushes and admits that she is. Then she asks what is more beautiful, her palms or her. Seong-jae says that she is the prettiest, which makes Yeon smile. Woo. She laughs and says that now you can go to sleep. He grabs her sleeve and awkwardly asks to sleep together. But when she questions, he backs off and sends her to bed. Confused, she presses the casket to her chest behind the door and tries to understand what has come over him. Seong-jae thinks that when he saw her smiling, he almost took her into the room without asking. The next morning, they are both very embarrassed. Seong-jae asks to be allowed to join the shopping trip with Mom. Yeonwoo almost clings to the threshold of surprise, but allows it. Seong-jae is scared that she is avoiding him. When she is already on her way to the store, Seong-jae texts her, again asking if she is comfortable seeing her mother. If not, he will talk to her. She just snorts at it and remembers how he called her beautiful yesterday. Blushing, she forbids herself to be so happy. But she is still happy and thinks that yesterday she thought for the first time marrying him was the right decision. Suddenly, her mother-in-law calls her. A relative of her distant relative has died, and they urgently need to go to the funeral, so she will not be able to come to the store. Seong-jae immediately writes to her, offering to form a procurement company. She wonders how he found out so quickly and refuses. After all, it is already in place. She is greeted by professionally smiling female employees who say they have heard a lot about her, and turn to Jeonwoo is very formal. She thinks that she is not used to this appeal. They let her try on a dress and a coat, and she, confused, asks to take a walk around the store. She doesn't know what to choose. Suddenly, she sees a familiar face. Yeonwoo remembers her childhood, when she thought that all stories had a happy ending, because that's how they wrote in fairy tales. She remembers how Ma Sang-hee gave her textbooks. Then she believed that her life would be a fairy tale. However, Ok Seung-hae then beat her up, calling her a book thief. A familiar face is Ma Sang-hee. She is happy for Jeonwoo, asks why she hasn't called or seen her in so long. Yeonwoo barely finds the strength to say hello to her. She realizes that since Ma Sang-hee is here, her mother is also not far away. And indeed, Ok Seung-hae approaches, who says that she missed her. She offers to go shopping together. Yeonwoo thinks she'll take a quick look at the clothes and leave. She doesn't want to deal with them anymore. Ma Sang-hee takes the dress she saw from her Yeonwoo. She feels tired and thinks it's time to go home. Meanwhile, Ma Sang-hee screams that someone took her necklace that her mother gave her for her birthday. Ok Seung-hae looks at Yeon suspiciously. Woo. She demands to show her pockets and bag, accusing her of kleptomania since childhood. He says that at least Jeonwoo didn't do it out of malice. The necklace must be returned. Yeonwoo realizes that she speaks so confidently because she came here on purpose to smear her reputation. Maybe she even threw the necklace in her bag herself. The situation is saved by a guy who looks like a puppy. He appears out of nowhere, holds out a necklace, and says that it got caught on the dress. Ok Seung-hae is disappointed with how things turned out and looks at the boy. He accuses them of immediately rushing to accuse an innocent person without searching. How ugly it is. Ok Seung-hae is angry because her plan failed. She does not understand who he is, who dared to disturb her, but she understands that Yeonwoo is familiar with him. She apologizes to Jeonwoo, says that she just remembered the old one. Yeonwoo firmly replies that she has never stolen anything. And if the woman continues to spread such gossip about her, she will not sit idly by. She will not allow herself to be offended again. OK Seong-jae, in turn, is sure that these are just empty words. She will forever remain Cinderella. And next time she, Seong-jae, will not be left behind. Yeon-woo also leaves the store, promising to visit his mother-in-law later. Jae arrives at the store, but he is too late. The workers tell him what happened, and he storms out of the store, angry as hell. He thinks that Ok Seong-jae should be gotten rid of. John is at home. Woo, dressed in street clothes, is on the bed thinking about how she hoped to never see Ok Seong-jae again, and never thought they would run into each other like this. Although it is strange that they did not meet, because Seong-jae, the vice president of the department store, which is part of the J Group Corporation, and her husband Ok Seong-jae, manages another branch of the corporation. Jae comes in with a knock and confesses that he heard about the conflict in the store. He asks if she was very scared, and John-woo says everything is fine, even though it isn't. Seong-jae is upset that she doesn't tell him everything. After all, then it will be easier on the soul, and he will always stand up for her. He promises that bad people will definitely get what they deserve. She smiles, not understanding what he is talking about. After all, this happens only in fairy tales. As she laughs, her stomach suddenly starts grumbling. She's embarrassed, and he offers her to go somewhere together. Yeon-woo offers the daikon beef soup, and he accepts. As they walk down the street, Seong-jae thinks he wants to take her hand and laughs at himself. There is no greater saint than him among married men. He takes her hand and justifies it by saying that her hands are very cold and he can warm them. She tries to take her hand away, but he squeezes it and asks why it's so hard for her to hold his hand once. Then he puts it in his pocket. Yeon-woo blushes, not understanding what's wrong with him. Seong-jae says that this is where she should be. At this time, Ok Seong-jae tries to call the store and find out the contacts of that unknown puppy boy. She is angry because no one knows anything. She thinks he came straight away with John-woo and saved her when Seong-jae slipped a necklace into her bag. She decides that this is her lover, so she came without a husband. And Seong-jae wants to tell about it. After dinner, John-woo takes Seong-jae to see the Christmas tree in town. It amuses him that this is exactly what she wanted, but Yeon-woo was sad to see the Christmas tree only in a music box. She steps closer and skids through the ice on the road. Seong-jae catches her in his arms and asks her to be more careful. Yeon-woo thinks that he acts like a perfect man, but it's all a lie, and says that he has a deceptive voice. Once he proposed to her in the same way, and she went. She gets out of the hug and says that he got married without knowing anything, and she didn't know anything, not even about what kind of men she liked, and she does many things for the first time together with him. He asks her to tell something else, and to her answer that they will be sad stories, he promises to accept everything. Then she decides to tell him everything. She reproaches him for the fact that he is never at home, sometimes for several days in particular, like a year ago in August. He corrects her that he then went into the reserve forces, and she looked at him like an insect when he returned. Yeon-woo says she didn't know where he was. They come to the conclusion that it is necessary to communicate more. He asks her about the difficulties she faced, and Yeon-woo gets lost. She asks if he's going to use her confession to get her out or add to the grounds for divorce. He is disappointed that she still suspects him. She asks him to forget what she said, as if to rewind time. After all, it is possible, just as it is possible for those who wanted to separate, to become close. Seong-jae thinks that Christmas is usually just the busiest time for him at the department store. He couldn't even look at the Christmas tree properly. But she is beautiful. Maybe because next to John-woo, John is at home. Woo thanks her for the evening because it lifted her spirits and goes to bed. Seong-jae asks her to sleep together. She agrees on one condition, only if he does not touch her. Seong-jae is shocked. They were holding hands only recently, and now she's asking for something like this? After all, he will not rush her as soon as they are in bed. He wants to stroke her head, touch her, and just lying next to each other is like being half brother and sister. He suggests leaving everything as it is and sleeping separately. Yeon-woo is outraged, once again thinking that all he wants is sexual intimacy. She says that there is nothing special about him, which already infuriates Seong-jae. He looks at her and she starts yelling that he did his evil look again that she asked him not to do. Seong-jae again demands that she not come to his bedroom and not be interested in his health. She does not agree because it is for his sake. Seong-jae says that he can handle himself quite well. Yeonu points out that they are a couple, and such interference is normal. Seong-jae catches her at the word spouse and says that since they are, there should be emotional and physical intimacy between them, and begins to undress. He notes that it was long time to think about the child. Yeonu falls against the wall and blushes, not knowing what to do. Seong-jae presses on, claiming that this is also the best method to check his condition. Seong-jae offers her a choice, her room or his. Yeonu runs away in terror, shouting that she is not mentally ready. He gives her another 10 minutes to prepare. She says she needs 1,000 times more. He calculates that it's 7 days and says, okay, then a week later. She falls face down on the bed and thinks that Seong-jae is a little thing, but because of Seong-jae, she will definitely not sleep tonight. Okay, Seong-jae comes to Seong-jae's office. She says that she saw John in the store woo with a lover, and he thinks to himself that only Seong-jae loves in this relationship. If you make him lose interest, he will dump her. But instead of getting angry at the news like she had hoped, Seong-jae just laughs and thinks to himself that he wants to rip her mouth out. Seong-jae is visibly surprised that she came not to apologize for yesterday, but to curse his wife. After all, 2 years ago he asked her not to touch John Woo. He throws bank statements in front of her and says that she had to pay a lot of bribes to get her daughter to graduate from university. And the professor who took the money is awaiting investigation. Seong-jae mentions that she bribed the head of the department so that Sang-hee could finish her education. Even her husband does not know about it. So how could Seong-jae know? He says that he will no longer ask her for anything. Let Seong-jae do what he wants, and he will do what he wants himself. Trembling, Seong-jae leaves. She is outraged that he did not believe her. She promises to find evidence and bring John out Woo for clean water. Alarmed, Seong-jae arrives near the university and calls Yeon-woo to call her for dinner. But she is already eating in the dining room. He thinks she should have called him. There, he sees her Hee-jin fixing her hair, and she smiles at him as sincerely as she's ever smiled at him. While she goes to put the trays, the colleague looks at the fingers with which John was touching Woo. Seong-jae remembers Seong-hye's words about a lover and becomes jealous. He is certain Yeon-woo is not the type of person to cheat while married. However, Hee-jin is definitely hiding something. They meet on the street. Hee-jin asks if Seong-jae really loves Yeon that much. Woo Seong-jae tries to guess what he is trying to achieve. He wonders about the intent of this question. Hee-jin says Yeon-woo had been preparing hard for the scientific meeting, but recently said that she would not be able to go due to an important family matter. This is the first time Seong-jae has heard about it. Hee-jin points out that there should be respect for each other's work between spouses, and a minimum of restrictions. Besides, the professor might think badly of her if she quits her job. Seong-jae promises to fix it. He wants to talk to John Woo, because if she quit preparing for the assembly, something happened to her, which she does not talk about again. Out loud, he says that if anything, he will not send her to collect by force. At this moment, Ion comes out of the building. Woo-ta sees them both. Inadvertently, she calls Seong-jae Sonbai, which confuses them with Hee-jin, and quickly corrects herself by addressing her husband as dear. He calls her home. On the way, he notes that if they learn to say dear and dear firmly, everyone will begin to consider them a real friendly couple. She sighs. He asks her about the collection, but she says that she will not go because she already knows everything. She cannot say that she has already been there, in the future from which she returned. Seong-jae grabs her hand and asks what she is hiding from him. Is someone insulting her, or is someone forcing her not to go to that meeting? Even if it is a teacher, he will figure it out. She explains that the collection will be far away and will be held for 3 days. It is a long time, so she does not want to go. After all, it is much more important to check his health. He offers her to go together. Then she thought it wasn't a funny joke, but it was serious, and he went to pick her up in Busan without warning her. They end up in different rooms and agree to meet in the lobby tomorrow morning so she can check on his health. In the morning, she asks how he slept and says that her colleagues will arrive soon, so they can't talk for long. He leans into her ear and offers to have fun together after the conference. She, surprised that he knows how to have fun, agrees. He is going to the plane because it is time for him to go to work. He flew to Busan from Seoul specifically to see her. He wonders which one is in Jeonwoo will have an expression on her face when she finds out. Okay, Seung-jae's husband, Ma Jin-tae, comes to visit him. He came to talk about the conversation with his wife. He's angry that Seong-jae found out about the bribe to the professor and stresses that sometimes kids are difficult. Seong-jae refuses to stop the investigation even if he could and suggests that Ma Jin-tae think about his karma. He says that there is no need to keep such evil in the store because of a small incident. Seong-jae understands that if Yeonwoo can forgive people like this family, but he can't, and this can become a serious disorder between them. Ma Jin-tae begs to get into his position, but Seong-jae refuses. Then he threatens him that he will regret it. Seong-jae thinks that he will do anything to bring this family down to the very bottom. Seong-jae manages to fly from Seoul to Busan in time to catch Yeonwoo is in the lobby of the hotel. She just came after having dinner. They agree to meet again tomorrow morning. Seong-jae offers them to go up to their rooms together, but she refuses. Colleagues will start gossiping. However, she thanks him for going with her. On the evening of the last day of the conference, Seong-jae heads to Yeonwoo with a package of clothes. However, she runs away from him, complaining that she smells because she wears the same suit for 3 days. Hee-jin approaches them and apologizes for his tactlessness last week, explaining that he was just sorry that a smartass like Yeonwoo will not attend the conference. He thanks for taking care of Jeonwoo, but Seong-jae stalks the boy. Why does he do it? He is just her colleague, and Seong-jae is a man. At this moment, Ion herself approaches Woo, asks what the two of them are doing here. Seong-jae asks if she's done, and when she says yes, he takes her hand and tells her they're going. Yeonwoo thinks it's their first time together at the hotel. They didn't have a honeymoon due to her entering graduate school. Therefore, now it seems to her that their honeymoon is now. In the room, she puts on a shirt that Seong-jae bought for her, but it is short. She screams in surprise, and frightened, Seong-jae bursts into the room where he sees her half naked. It turns out that she mixed up the bags. The shirt belongs to Seong-jae, and the bag with her things was on the sofa. She hides under the blanket and apologizes. Seong-jae says she can wear it. Yeonwoo asks him not to tease or she won't go anywhere with him. Seong-jae points out that it is okay not to go. After all, the week given to her to gather her thoughts has already passed. He points out that having fun here together is much better than doing anything outside. Yeonwoo panics, thinking that she is still a schoolgirl at heart and will die from his actions. She begs for mercy, and he promises to do so, calling her with a gentle Korean appeal, Yeonwoo-ya. She is surprised because this is the first time he called her that. He jokes, offering to check on his well-being, and says that if she doesn't say no, he's willing to do anything. She refuses intimacy, and then he kisses her in return, begging to allow at least this. After the kiss, he says he did it because she's beautiful. Yeonwoo blushes, and Seong-jae leaves the room, suggesting that she change. She touches her lips, repeating his words about herself. They go for a walk in the city, ride the funicular. For Jeonwoo, this is the first experience. Seong-jae thinks that when she says that, he wants to make this day her best memory. But before everything ended on a bad note, this day cannot be wasted. They ride a funicular over the sea, but nothing is visible there. Then Seong-jae suggests that she should not look at the water, but at the lights of the night city. She says that her parents didn't have many pleasant experiences, including riding the funicular, and when something wonderful happens, she always remembers them. Seong-jae offers to send them on a trip at his expense, but Yeonwoo is against. She has to earn it herself. After all, nothing can surpass the care of an adult child for his parents. She suggests that he take more care of his parents, and he promises to do so. Just at that moment, his father calls and says that the Rye company, which promised cooperation, is reneging on the deal. At that moment, she sees that puppy boy and rushes after him into the crowd, grabbing his hand. She asks how they met like this, and he jokes that it was fate and asks why she caught him. Yeonwoo thanks him for his help in the shop and says that he showed up very unexpectedly. He asks her to be careful because Shinghai looked very bloodthirsty. To cope with such, you need to be stronger. He leaves, and at that moment, Seong-jae suddenly hugs her. He has been looking for her for half an hour because her phone is turned off. She is surprised. According to her internal clock, 10 minutes have passed. Seong-jae asks her not to disappear anymore when she is with him. She, happy, hugs his hand. At the restaurant, she asks if everything is okay after talking to her father. He promises to sort out everything at home and offers her a drink. She refuses. She does not drink outside the house because she is stupid. Seong-jae promises to take responsibility for her, and when she says that if he gets drunk, she should be responsible for him. A reminder that her life should be more important to her than his. She doubts that she can. Since childhood, she was beaten and humiliated. She married without love and even divorced in another future. But the biggest shock of her life was the death of Seong-jae. Maybe she wants to save him not for his sake, but because of guilt and her own selfishness. They drink, and she gets drunk. In the taxi to the hotel, she clings to Seong-jae and asks her not to let her fall asleep. This is her drunken habit, to fall asleep wherever she can. Seong-jae is even a little disappointed. He expected more drama. He carries her to sleep on his shoulders, puts her on the bed and takes off her coat, not daring to do anything else. He wonders aloud that he learned about her habits only 2 years later. She says in a dream that she did not trust him. Seong-jae asks if she trusts him now and leans in for a kiss. She reminds him with a smile of his oath not to touch her, and he argues that he would never make such an oath. Seong-jae asks not to make him a good person. She grabs his cheeks and thanks him for being alive. He argues that she is specifically provoking him. Yeonu throws him on the bed, demanding a joint sleep by the handle. Seong-jae demands to let him go, but she refuses. He tries to kiss her, but she is already asleep. He hopes she won't have a nightmare and at the same time thinks he's grateful to them. After all, this is how they were finally able to get closer. But why did she want a divorce? In the morning, Woo thanks him for getting her to the hotel safely, but he responds rather dryly. Yeonu doesn't understand why he's so cocky. She also doesn't understand why he holds her hand at the airport, despite his displeased face. She will not get lost. Yeonu asks why put her on the bed, suffer through the night in discomfort, and then pout, making her uncomfortable. With a smile, Seong-jae suggests that she live with such feelings for a while. Seong-jae tries to invite her to dinner, but she mentions that she had arranged to meet her friend Soo-ji. Seong-jae is disappointed that she doesn't want to be together a little longer. He allows her to drink outside the house, asking to inform half an hour before the onset of intoxication so that he can call to pick her up. She worries that it is uncomfortable, but he assures her that everything is fine. She thanks and regrets that they could not have fun longer. He offers to continue for Christmas, but she mentions that she already has plans to volunteer at the university, and he's always busy these days. He gives her a ride to her friend's place, helping her out of the car. Soo-ji is surprised at how different he looks next to Yeonu, and tells her that he doesn't worry about her anymore. They have a perfect relationship. After all, when she saw him last time, he was completely different. She then mentions that the meeting was a secret and hastily lies that she meant their wedding. John is at home. Woo thinks that her friend has been behaving strangely and should ask Seong-jae what is wrong. But he comes back very, very late and nightmarishly drunk. Went to a meeting with an employee of the rye company. Yeonu is already sleeping. He walks into her room and leans in for a kiss. But instead, he just whispers sweet dreams to her. Yeonu smiles. In the morning, she wakes up and sees 2 missing from her father-in-law. He asks to make sure that Seong-jae is at home and to wake him up. They need to talk, but he can't call his son. She promises to do so, and before that she will do her favorite thing, listen to Seong-jae's heartbeat. Suddenly he wakes up, throwing her on the bed and kisses her, and continues to kiss. When he tries to unbutton her pajamas, she punches Seong-jae in the forehead, bringing him back to his senses. He thought he was dreaming of her. He yells at her, reminding her that he asked her not to touch him in the morning, and then sees how scared she is and apologizes for his actions, and explains that he needs time to realize the reality in the morning. He questions if he did anything crazy besides the kiss. She is annoyed that even for a kiss he should be apologizing from morning to night, but she formulates the idiom incorrectly. He laughs and gets a pillow in the face. She screams, demanding to call her father back. Later, Seong-jae informs her father that someone leaked information about the deal with Paradise to a rival company, so they canceled it. However, Rai is friendly to J Group, so they can be returned. At home, he says he's hungry, and she offers him rice with kimchi. When he says it's his favorite dish, she vindictively pours him a bowl full of huge bitters. Seong-jae promises to eat everything. Yeon-woo leaves to talk to his mother. They are just arriving from the village in Seoul and plan to stay with her brother. But she is thinking of booking them a hotel. He offers to accommodate his parents in their house because there are many rooms here, and they will not interfere with him. Yeon-woo is surprised because he has been so protective of his personal space all this time. He is going to call her father, tell him to come to them, and she thanks him. At that moment, he gets a call. It's an actress and his girlfriend Yoo Sa-ra, the real reason for their divorce. When they met, Sa-ra offered to call her simply older sister, since she and Seong-jae are childhood friends. Yeon-woo always wondered why he married her if he had such an attractive girlfriend. Once upon a time, when Jeon-woo was sick, Sa-ra came to their house uninvited because she knows the password. She noted that she knows almost everything about Seong-jae, and the fact that the lack is fake, too. Before he made Yeon-woo proposal about him and Sa, there were scandalous rumors that they were lovers. Sa-ra didn't know what to do, and she asked to fix the situation. Soon he got married. Despite this, said Sa-ra, she would like Jeon-woo and Seong-jae got along to keep him happy, and so she just came for music records. Sa-ra asked not to attack Seong-jae because of their meeting, because Yeon-woo should be grateful. Thanks to Seong-jae's compassion, she became his wife. Yeon-woo thinks that such words only make one feel miserable. She cries at the thought that she was only a means to protect Sa's life for Seong-jae Ra. She is interested in asking, but she is afraid of the answer. Because of this, she starts avoiding Seong-jae, and he notices it. He even directly asks what happened, but she lies that everything is fine. Seong-jae thinks it's because of the offer to sleep together when the parents come. He invents what should be presented to Jeon-woo some Christmas present, and then she thaws. Sa is calling him Ra. She's having a movie premiere party, and she was expecting to see him. He refuses. Yeon-woo knows about the party and thinks he went to see Yoo Sa-ra. She texts him if there will be a party at the hotel and suggests that he go alone. He refuses to leave without her. Suddenly, someone opens the door. Yeon-woo thinks it's Sa-ra, but this is Seong-jae. He did not go to the premiere. This makes her feel warm. At most, first of all, he is interested in her mood, which also pleases Jeon-woo. Suddenly, she smells a strange smell. These flowers are a gift to her. However, she is not happy to see them. Seong-jae says that he saw how beautiful they were and immediately thought of her. However, after Jeon-woo received a bouquet after his death, she fell in love with flowers as a gift. Yeon-woo starts crying and Seong-jae worries that something happened to her that day. She replies that she hates flowers, especially pink roses, and thinks the scent reminds her of that day. He apologizes and says he didn't know that, offering to go together and replace with ones she likes. Yeon-woo mentally apologizes that it's because of her selfishness that she grumbles at him about strange things. After all, she has only one desire, to live in a world where Seong-jae is. He hugs her and strokes her head consolingly. They go to the flower shop, where of all the flowers, Jeon-woo chooses pink echeveria, because they are very hardy, and she is inspired by the word. On the way home, Seong-jae is happy that his wife is feeling better. She asks why he didn't go to the movie premiere, and Seong-jae replies that there's no point in going there alone. And the fact that his best friend starred in it is not more important than Jeon-woo. She blushes and refuses. At night, she dreams of a version of herself from the future who tells her that she cannot change fate. That in the end, she will shed tears over these flowers, because they will part and she will send him to the afterlife. On the evening of December 31st, she wakes up screaming and decides to drink some beer to regain consciousness. Seong-jae checks her forehead and says that she seems to have a fever and shouldn't drink. She says she will drink anyway. He asks if she will drink with him. Yeon-woo replies that no, she just wants to sleep soundly after watching TV. Seong-jae is offended. He says they should watch the traditional ringing of New Year's bells, but she wants to watch idols. They scramble, fighting for the TV remote. Suddenly, the countdown to the new year begins. They fall silent, and when the count reaches 0, they smile and wish each other a happy new year. Seong-jae throws his arms out and asks her to come here so he can hug her. She retorts with a sly expression that he should come here, and she will hug him. Eventually, they meet in the middle of the sofa. Seong-jae asks that of all the men he is the closest to her. Then, says John Woo, she should be the closest woman to him. He replies that it has always been like that.